All right, I think we can go ahead and get started then. So first of all, I just want to say welcome everyone and thank you for joining us in the Holding Patterns waiting room. We're very honored and excited to be joined here today with Alka Joshi, our MFA Writing alum, and Henna Artists, Neeta, Sonia, and Sara. First off, I am the Alumni Engagement Manager at CCA. I am also an alum and I graduated from the illustration program in 2016. And we at CCA and in the Alumni Association started the Holding Patterns project at the beginning of April after observing the effects that the pandemic was having on the arts and design community. We wanted to create a space where CCA's alumni community could come together and share projects that were canceled, postponed, or shut to the public, and support each other while we wait for it to be safe to gather again in person. And we started this project, The Waiting Room, as a place to come together for conversation and discussion around this moment and what it's meant for our work. We were really excited when Alka reached out to us with this brilliant idea to discuss her debut novel and bring together some henna artists to discuss the healing art of henna, its global reach, and how artists whose practices are intimately rooted in physical proximity have shifted their practices in light of the pandemic. So before I go over and introduce everybody, I wanted to go over a quick couple of housekeeping items. So Alka will be starting off reading from her novel, The Henna Artist, and be sharing a bit about her journey in creating this novel. And after her reading, our other panelists will join in for a discussion on their practices and the effect of the pandemic on their craft. And then we will wrap up with a Q&A. So first, I want to point out at the bottom of your Zoom window, the chat feature, which is a single speech bubble with the word chat underneath. And throughout the program, I'll be posting links to our panelists' handles and other things that come up in conversations so that you can access them. First, I can put in the Holding Patterns handle for anyone who is not following us yet. There you go. And second function I want to point out is the Q&A. It's two speech bubbles, same thing at the bottom of the screen. So if you have any questions that come up throughout the event for our panelists, go ahead and type them there. And I will join back in at the end for the Q&A and read those out for our panelists to answer live. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists that we have here. So first we are joined by Alka Joshi. Alka, born in Jodhpur, Rajasthan, India, has lived in the US since the age of 9. She graduated from Stanford University and worked in the fields of advertising and PR before starting her own marketing consultancy. In 2011, she earned her MFA in creative writing from CCA. The Henna Artist is her first novel and she is working on the sequel. We are also joined today by Anita Sharma. Neeta has been practicing and teaching the craft of henna for 3 decades throughout Asia, Australia, Europe, and North America. An internationally renowned bridal henna artist, Neeta also produces the International Spring Fling Henna Conference in Northern California, now in its 14th year. Sara Walters is also here with us today. Sara began henna painting in 2008, eventually leaving her corporate career to focus on the art of henna. Her henna crowns for cancer patients and belly henna for pregnant women have gained international attention. Her online shop provides organic henna supplies, and she co-hosts the Pacific Northwest Henna Adventure Conference every spring. And also with us today is Sonia Sumaira. Raised in Quebec, Canada, in a Pakistani family, Sonia is known for her traditional and contemporary style of henna. Since 2012, she has been traveling internationally to provide henna services and teach her techniques across North America and the Caribbean. We're so happy to have you all here with us today, so thank you for being here. And let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the video for our other panelists, and I'll hand it over to you, Alka, to do your reading.
Thank you very much, and I'm so delighted to be here. I am going to read a little bit from the Henna Artist, but first I just wanted to cover a little bit about when I was at CCA. I graduated in 2011, and it took 10 years for me to bring this novel to the hands of readers. I don't say that to scare anybody out there with their craft and how much time they put into it already, but just to let you know that I think an artistic endeavor is an exercise in patience. And I learned a lot of patience during those years. I also learned a lot about myself, and I also learned a lot about humility and how you have to accept help from a lot of different people, because it does take a village to create something. It's never an individual, completely individual endeavor. So let me just read to you from The Henna Artist, which is a novel that I reimagined as a life of my mother that she could have had she not had an arranged marriage, or had she been able to escape her arranged marriage before the children were born. What if she could have done anything she wanted to instead of doing exactly what her parents arranged for her? What if she could have had a career of her own? What if she could have finally found what her life's calling was and be able to realize that? So I created a character called Lakshmi. She is 30 years old when we meet her in The Henna Artist, and she has been for 13 years perfecting her craft of painting henna on the hands and feet and bellies and backs of all kinds of women, and in the process helping them realize their dreams. No one knows quite how she does it, but she has an extraordinary ability to do that. No one knows about her past either. And if she were to tell them exactly how she learned the craft of henna, that would be a black mark on her, and she may never be invited into these houses again. So I'm going to read from chapter 2 of the novel. This is where Lakshmi has built a house of her own. She is visiting her house. It's not quite completed yet, but she loves to visit a house that she can call her own, that has been financed by the money she has made from the work of her hands and of her wit and of her intelligence. Wet plaster, cement, stone. My new home smelled of these. Earlier this evening, I had resisted the urge to come here and check the builder's progress. At 10 o'clock at night, when I should have been doing my accounts and preparing for the next day, I stood in my unfinished home waiting for hurry, my hand gripping the knife I used for cutting plants and splitting seeds. Outside, the light from the street lamp fell across my beautiful floor, revealing a mosaic of saffron flowers in the round, spiraling bouquet leaves, and vases with feminine curves. I thought of Hazi and Nazreen and the other courtesans in the city of Agra who had first introduced me to the designs of their native lands. Isfahan, Marrakesh, Kabul, Calcutta, Madras, Cairo. In the city of the Taj Mahal, where I worked for 3 years after leaving Hari and before coming to Jaipur, I decorated the arms, hips, and backs of the pleasure women with henna. My patterns became more fanciful with time. I placed a Persian peacock inside a Turkish clamshell. I turned an Afghan mountain bird into a Moroccan fan. So when it came time to design the floor of my house, I created a pattern as complex as the henna I had painted on those women's bodies, delighting in the knowledge that its meaning was known only to me. The saffron flowers represented sterility, incapable of producing seed as I had produced incapable of producing children. The Ashoka lion, like the icon of our new republic, a symbol of my ambition. I wanted more always, for what my hands could accomplish, what my wits could achieve, more than my parents had thought possible. The fine work beneath my feet required the skill of artisans who had worked exclusively for the palace. All financed by the painstaking preparations of my charmed oils, lotions, henna paste, and most importantly, the herb sachets I supplied Samir. Had Hari come to take all of that away from me? So that, I wanted to read that passage in particular because that is an imagining that came from my mind and all of the research I did about how henna is applied, where henna first came from, how henna was taught to many people, and how today it has become the global phenomenon that it has. So I talked a little bit about patience. Every time that I thought I had completed a final draft of this novel, I was wrong. Because a mentor, a CCA instructor, somebody from my agency, my literary agency, or somebody from the publishers, or an editor that I had hired to help me edit the book, they would say, no, you're not quite ready yet. You need to dig deeper. You need to go deeper into your characters. You need to understand what it's like to maintain a reader's interest over the 300 or 400 pages that you're writing. And so I would be really downtrodden. I would feel completely disheartened. I would feel like, oh no, I can't do this. Nobody asked for this novel. Just like I'm sure in your craft, whatever your craft is, people are probably, you're probably thinking, no one has asked me to do this. No one said, oh, so-and-so, you must become this kind of artist or this kind of creative person. You have done this because there's something inside you that says you want to do this. And so it is important to be patient for the work that's within you to come out on a page, on somebody's skin, on a piece of canvas. These are all lessons in patience that each of us as artists have to learn. Another lesson that I learned is that writing or doing any kind of artistic endeavor, because I also came from the world of painting and drawing, any kind of artistic endeavor requires us to go deeper within ourselves. We have to discover what is inside of us, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We have to mine that and put it forth in our work. Because if we don't do that, then our characters stay flat, our canvas is flat, everything we present to the world only has 1 or 2 dimensions. And we want to provide as many dimensions as possible so that we reach an audience that sees themselves in so many different parts of what we have created. This is true of henna artists, this is true of painters, this is true of writers, this is true of architects, this is true of furniture makers, everybody. There are parts within you that you are putting out there in your work. And in order to do that, it's almost like self-therapy. You have to go deep inside. You have to know who you are in order to create. And a third thing that I mentioned that is really important in learning the craft and in my tenure journey was that I had to allow a lot of people to give me feedback. You receive feedback from your instructors and then from your fellow students. But the important thing about that is that the feedback never stops. You will then go into a job or maybe into a project. You will have bosses who will give you feedback. You will have clients who will give you feedback. You need to be open and listen to all of that feedback because there are kernels of truth in what everybody is telling you. Maybe not all of it, but you will learn over time which parts of that feedback you need to actually pay attention to and which parts of the feedback you can let go of. But that takes time, and it takes a lot of key learnings on your part about yourself and about other people to figure out which feedback you want to pay attention to. But it's important to let it all in and to listen to all of it. I was a really shy child, and so I learned to observe people. I would watch people all the time because I didn't know what to say. I thought that I had nothing important to contribute to conversations, so I just sat back and listened. And in that listening, you find what people don't say. In that listening, you find what people are communicating through their bodies, through their gestures, through their facial expressions that they're not saying. And when you can tune into those very private and deep parts of people just by observation, your work, your craft gets deeper, it gets richer, and it gets really much more important to you and to your audiences. So I hope that you will become an observer of your life, of your environment, of people, and of every feedback mechanism that is available to you. When I say that you should become an observer of your environment, what I mean is that you should explore wherever you are, pay attention to the sights, the sounds, and the smells. That is something you're going to incorporate into every piece of work that you're doing. Whether it's art, whether it's writing a book, whether it's a piece of architecture, you are going to incorporate all of the sensory input around you. So be mindful of what you are, what environment you're in, and observe everything around you. One of the things that people tell me all the time about the henna artist is that they feel they are in 1950s Jaipur, India, when they read the book. And that's because I put so much sensory feeling into the book. I also did a lot of research. And I'm sure that when you do your work, your craft, you do a lot of research. You do background research on the people that you're doing a project for. You do research on the actual project itself, whether it's historical research, whether it's people research, whether you're interviewing a lot of people to make something happen. And you want to incorporate as much of that and be in tune with that environment as possible. So I feel that I succeeded finally at the end of 10 years, and I couldn't be happier with the audience letting me know that in many cases I succeeded. I succeeded in reaching people, in moving people. People have told me that this novel is giving them hope and it's changing their lives for the better. It's asking them to question the choices they have made in their lives, and also to reinvent parts of themselves that perhaps they could do better, or they could do differently, or they could help, parts that could help them realize what they really want to do in their lives. So with that, I want to bring on all of our fabulous henna artists today. And of course, because I wrote a book about henna, I am in touch now with so many henna artists around the world. And I have selected 3 for you guys to listen to. Sonia Sumaira, Sara Walters, and of course, Neeta Sharma. They are incredible artists who also are doing all of the things that I just mentioned. They have learned humility, they have learned patience, and they have gone into the world of self-discovery, where what they do now is giving to their clients something of themselves every single time they touch skin. So welcome, ladies. I'm so happy to see all of you. I think that one of the things that people want to know, that artists always want to know, is how do I go from creating the art to becoming a full-time artist? How do I go from just wanting to do this work that is my passion to making a living from it? So I wanted to, first of all, Neeta, I know you and I have talked about the fact that you had a very secure job as a social worker. You could have been set for life in that job, but you found the courage to go and boldly conquer this profession that even your parents hadn't wanted you to go into. So tell us a little bit about how you finally made that leap, and at what time in your life you made that leap.
Thank you for having me over. I have done henna for about 32 years now, and it always fascinated me from the first time, like when I saw it, when I took a cone in my hand for the first time, from doing henna for willing guinea pigs to kind of making it a profession. I remember the first bride I did, a paid bride, was in '92. And since then, like I've done it in the different countries I've lived in. I worked full-time till 2010. And I always, means the job was very stressful. It was a good job. I had like a good boss and everything, but the job itself. And then when I would go to henna brides, and I would just come back home, being such a happy person. So I always wished for it, like that I wish I could do this full time. I wish I could give it up, but then there was such good benefits in the job. And one time, I think, and it was actually the lowest point in time in my life. Like we were having a lot of struggles, and my husband had a business because it was a time of the recession, was not doing well, but I had just had enough. And I said, I worked hard towards it, where at that point of time, I was almost doing like 2 jobs because I was trying to build up my henna business so that I could leave it and still be, leave my actual job and be comfortable in what I was doing. So I just had it. And one day I said, I'm quitting. And I gave my notice, and like 15 days later, I was a free bird.
And then you had to figure out how to market yourself to even have more clients than you already had, right? So how did you do that?
It's at that time, there was not much social media. It was all word of mouth, and like I've had amazing, again, in my henna journey, I've had where I've done a bride 12 years ago, and I'm like going back 12 years later to do like the brothers getting married. So the family wants me to come and do henna for the family, or a sisters got married 7 years ago, and then they call me. There was one family I remember, they had like 3 weddings in the span of a year and a half. And I went there each time, and it's just so good to reconnect with the families. So if I do a bride and then her family and friends see me there, so then, that's how they know. They'll take my card or they'll ask the bride. And I mean, that's how at that point of time, like my business got popular. It was word of mouth, and then social media came. So it used to be Facebook, and now it's Instagram.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sara, you also quit a corporate job. You finally said, I'm going to do this full time. So tell us about your journey. Tell us about your transition. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, it was interesting, listening to Neeta, and we've talked before, but, there were a lot of parallels in our stories, I think. It was a little bit different for me in the sense that I didn't necessarily have a goal up front of wanting to do henna full time. It was something I did on the side. I had a career in tech doing data analysis. So I was, doing like programming type work and very, it's creative, but in a very different kind of way, in a much more black and white kind of way. So henna was my creative release, and I did that on the side for a number of years. I loved my day job, but I also loved henna. And I reached a point similarly where it felt like I had 2 jobs, and it was getting really difficult to manage both. Mm-hmm. Eventually I had to make a decision, and decide between the 2 because it was getting difficult to keep both going. Henna won for a variety of reasons. But, I think that I've always been I think probably many henna artists are service oriented and enjoy connecting with people. And that's just a really interesting part of this art form, is it's not solitary. Like painting, you imagine somebody sitting at an easel and they're by themselves and they're focusing on their work. But with henna, you have a person that is sitting there in front of you. You're very close. You know, you're touching them while you're working on them, and you're creating art that they're going to wear. And you incorporate many of the things that you were talking about also, Alka, like observing. I've always been a very observing person, and I think that's an important component in henna as well. You know, you're paying attention to the person that you're working on, listening to things that they're talking about, their likes and dislikes. You get a sense a little bit for who they are and maybe what kinds of things they might enjoy in their henna patterns. And so you incorporate that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, it's been a really beautiful journey, and it's continuing and never ending. You know, you're always learning, always growing.
Great. And I know that one of the ways that Neeta and Sara stay in touch with everybody is you guys do annual conferences where, you know, henna artists attend and they come and they learn new techniques. And this is how I met Sonia, because Sonia came to Neeta's conference where I was also invited to talk, and it's called the Spring Fling Henna Conference every year. And Sonia, I just liked you right away when I met you. You were just so warm, and I could see why people hire you to sit in front of them for hours at a time to do their henna. So tell me a little bit about what that experience is like when you are with a bride and you know she's got jitters or whatever, you know, there's a lot going on in her life. How do you bring that sense of calm to your work and through your hands onto her skin?
Okay, so mine is a slightly very similar to Neeta Didi. When I first meet with the bride, usually I do so many, I do the sister, and then the following year, the younger sister is getting married, or maybe the same year. So I'm usually the henna artist of the family. So I already know them because I already met the mom, I met everyone. So usually when brides are a bit nervous, I talk. I love talking. I love finding out how they met, excuse me, how they met the bride and groom. And it's beautiful to know because they're already in that moment. They're marrying the love of their life. They remember everything, how we proposed to them, how she picked her beautiful outfit. Like it could be any color, red, purple. Like if she chose a different color, she'll tell me the story why she chose a different color than tradition from the red. So usually I just talk to them as I do the henna, and I again, as Sara said, I do observe a lot. So I do know their personality a bit. Like, are they more traditional? Do they want black tips? If they don't want black tips, or do they want more of a modern pattern in the henna? So while I'm talking to them, we don't stop, and they don't stop me because I'm kind of learning them in terms of the design, what kind of personality I'm working with.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
totally.
So so if brides are more traditional, they would want traditional elements like dulha dulhan, or like elephants, peacocks. So I would add them in the henna. And if I feel that she's more of a modern bride, more of a she doesn't like so much of a traditional, but she still likes beautiful henna work, then we'll leave some space in that design, so it won't be as detailed as it would be for a traditional bride. So I think it has a lot to do when you talk to the brides, you get to know them. And again, when I meet them a year later, or 2 years later, if I'm doing the best friends henna, I know I have few families I've done their family henna. I'm literally the henna artist. So for me, I think Instagram does play a big role, but it's a lot of word of mouth with me. I think because they meet me in person, they hear me, all the friends are around, the bride is there. So I think it's just a connection I have with everyone.
Yeah.
I think that's what brings it, more fun.
So I think, Sonia, you have brought out something that I have noticed in all three of you. And I think it's important for every artist, every craftsperson to know this, that how you treat everybody you come into contact with matters. Every single person you come into contact with is a potential client or can refer you to a potential client. So yes. Be nice, be courteous, Be
Yes.
warm, be engaging, listen.
I think Alka, the main is be yourself. I think that's what it is. You know, you can, when I do bride, I feel it's just amazing when you're yourself, because the other person, or you don't know who's married at that point, right? They're watching you as you're talking to them, they're watching you, and the personality plays a huge role. I think a huge role. It shows in your art. If you're happy, your work turns out beautiful, right? And everyone, and I think that's what they want. It's a joyful time. It's a memorable time. You're part of their memory, like the big day. So you have to have a smile, even if you're tired, even if you did 3 brides, you have to have the big smile.
Yes, absolutely. The other part about having a business that is also a craft is that you have to be flexible in the time that you do it, right? Sometimes you guys are probably being asked to do like 3 brides or 3 people at a time. Or sometimes you're asked to come in at 10 o'clock at night, or maybe 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to be there all day. I think as a craftsperson, and I find this with my writing or with any way that people are asking me to promote my work, I have to be flexible in my time. I can't say, oh, you know, I am just only available between these hours. I think so talk a little bit about the kind of flexibility you bring to your craft, to your business, to your work.
I used to do 3 rides a day, but now, you know, I limit to 2 because I want to give like quality, and, you know, and the distances in California are so far away. So just getting from one ride to another takes forever. So, but then I offer 2 time slots. I'll say I have a morning around this time available, or I have like a late afternoon this time available. Mm-hmm. So brides have to kind of choose between what time works for them.
Mm-hmm. But 7 days a week, right?
It's not 7 days, only because most of the weddings happen here on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Sometimes if it's a long weekend, then a Monday.
Okay.
So then usually the brides are from, if it's a Friday wedding, then sometimes from Monday till like Thursday.
Okay.
Kind of. Sometimes I'll have a Friday bride if they have a Sunday wedding. So it depends, but typically Tuesday to Thursday are the busiest days.
And what about you, Sara?
Yeah, I think that, you know, when you take your passion for a particular art form or a craft, and want to turn it into a business, it's really important to balance the flexibility that you want to offer, because you know, it's your livelihood. So you need the income. And so you want to be accessible to your clients, but at the same time, you have to protect yourself to a certain extent, to make sure that you're not burning out. Like Neeta said, maybe not 3 brides a day anymore. You know, knowing your limits, knowing what works for you. Personally, I can't even do 2 brides a day. 1 bride is enough, and like mentally, I'm just done. You know, I need to recover a little bit. It's very intense. But we each have different, you know, things that are more or less challenging for us. And so if you want to be in it for the long run, you do have to balance being flexible with also, you know, protecting, you know, yourself mentally, physically. It's a very physical job. Even though you're sitting a lot, you're holding the same position for a long time. So it can be very hard on your back and on your neck. So, you know, balancing all of those things is crucial for the long term.
Right. But, you know, you guys also mentioned this fabulous thing where when you give so much of yourself to your craft, you are expending a lot of energy. You are mentally and physically exhausted, right? Now, Sonia, you have 2 kids and you've got another one on the way. How are you able to give so much to your clients when you're doing your craft?
I must say I have to give a credit to my family and my husband, to be very honest, because they are able to help me a lot. So it's not just me. So So my husband, he watches the kids. So we kind of work in a way that busiest day, he takes time off. So if I'm busy on Tuesday, Wednesday, he will make sure that he takes Tuesday, Wednesdays off. So he works on the weekends. And then I'll watch the kids on the weekends. And when it comes to hours, I do a couple of brides per day. I do give them time slots. So depending which area they are in, because Toronto, Brampton, Mississauga, they're very close to each other. It's about 45 minutes drive from one bride to the other. I manage it, but I don't work past 10 o'clock. So 10 o'clock is my cut time. So if a bride tells me, hey, I have an event, but I want you to come at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock, it just doesn't make sense because I am exhausted. I will not be doing the best job that I could if she was booking me at 9 a.m. or like 6 p.m. for instance. So timing matters a lot for me. And even in the morning, so my first bride, I would start at 9 a.m. or 8:30 the earliest, just because I have to manage what time I'm dropping my kids. I have to see the entire schedule of the day, what time the daycare opens. Do you think I'll have enough time to get to my bride on time? Because I want to be on time. Like Toronto rush hour is terrible. I don't want to be late. When I am providing a service, I don't want to be late. That's the last thing.
The Bay Area rush hour is also crazy. You know,
I was gonna say nothing like the Bay Area crazy rush hour.
Yes, and I'm sure Seattle is the same way, Sarah. It's just crazy everywhere. Now that brings me to the lockdown. Okay, so right now we don't have a lot of rush hour. We don't have craziness because nobody's on the streets. But you guys all are involved in a craft that requires touch. So with the henna that you're applying to people, you can't do that right now during the lockdown. So how are you staying in touch with clients? How are you keeping your name out there as a potential business that they can rely on when the lockdown is over? How are you maintaining contact? So let's start with Neeta.
I'm keeping my Instagram active. Actually, and me as well as I see a lot of artists, they're using this lockdown to, better in their craft. Like, I've always like said to myself, I wish I had time that I could practice. It's always go, go, go. So I joke and I say I practice on my brides, So this has given me a chance to learn like new things, do better. Like I've been involved in this project, which has become like an international project now. I call it Henna Artists of the World Unite. Oh. So we've been like actively helping each other, like teaching each other skills, like, so it's been like so amazing trying to lift the morale, because again, when you're not able to do your art, and like just seeing such craziness everywhere, like your spirits just go down. So this has actually helped lift people's spirits, and it makes me happy, to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah, how are you doing that? How are you maintaining contact right now?
Yeah, it is challenging when you can't go out and connect with people directly like we're used to doing. So social media has been a really crucial part of that, of course. That's how we can still connect virtually and see people, whether you're doing a session like this on Zoom or an Instagram Live, or just sharing past work, or even current practice that you're doing, not on other people. For me, I'm also keeping busy with the other part of my business, which is selling henna supplies. And so that's been actually surprisingly therapeutic. I love doing that anyway, but right now, at a time when I can't actually work on people, I can still mix the fresh paste and fill the cones and package them up and share them with people. And that's been actually really nice, because I get feedback from people about, oh, it's so nice to use and it smells amazing. And so that's been really wonderful. And, like Neeta said, I think we're all using the time to maybe do more observing, whether it's outside, sitting in the backyard, looking up at the trees blowing in the wind, and just kind of taking all of that in and trying to appreciate the rest that we have right now, which, you know, as a small business owner, it is just go, 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 you know, no matter what you're doing. And so I'm trying to focus on that and appreciate that.
Great. And Sonia, I saw you nodding when Sara mentioned the henna supplies. Are you also doing that? Creating?
No, I'm actually not, Alta. At Spring Fling, I found out that everyone makes their own henna, and I don't make my own henna paste. So I'm taking this time to learn how to mix henna paste and how to roll cones. Yes. So I'm doing slightly different. I am drawing. I'm doing live with Neeta and other artists around the world. But right now, the main focus is because I met so many artists that make their own henna paste, and I always have to rely on someone else to supply me the henna cones. So now that's what I'm taking the time.
Great.
To learn how to mix different recipes, like, you know, play around with the henna cones, because that is a big challenge. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and you know, in the Henna Artist, Lakshmi makes her own paste. That is one of the key things that makes her paste last longer. The kind of ingredients she puts in, and I learned early on through my research that the Henna Artists, the most renowned Henna artists, have a very proprietary henna paste that they make, and they don't tell that secret recipe to anybody. You know, they keep a little bit of that for themselves, which I think is fabulous. So you guys, I want to, before we turn this over to any kind of Q&A, I wanted to read just a little bit more from the book, because I think that when we think about being successful in any endeavor, we think it's all about money. We think it's, you know, we've been conditioned to think that it's about money and it's about the things you can acquire. And there's something that Lakshmi learns at the end of the Henna Artist that I think we can all relate to. And I think it's something that artists everywhere need to hear. Success was ephemeral and fluid, as I've found out the hard way. It came, it went. It changed you from the outside, but not from the inside. Inside, I was still the same girl who dreamed of a destiny greater than she was allowed. Did I really need the house to prove that I had skill, talent, ambition, and intelligence? And I think, you know, do you agree that that is something we all, as artists, we are giving of ourselves, and the end goal is not the money. It's not the money at the end of the rainbow. It is about achieving something that we feel we need to achieve given our skill, our intelligence, our craft. That is the most satisfying feeling in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, one positive review, comment, feedback from a client is worth far more than, you know, additional money or, you know, other things that we can get. Just knowing that we're reaching someone, that we're providing beauty to someone, you know, is the greatest reward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the beauty about like what we do is, I always say, we are one of the first things that kicks off the wedding, you know? So it's us setting the wedding on a positive tone. And then once everything's gone, like the makeup's washed away, everything, the bride's on a honeymoon, the henna's the last thing, like the thing that lasts the longest. And she, like looking at her henna even during her honeymoon, it reminds her of her wedding and the fun, you know, fun festivities that happen.
Right. Now, Neeta and Sonia, you've talked a lot about working on brides, and I know Sara also works on brides, but Sara, your work, what you have shown is also, and I don't know if we can pull up the slides, you guys, or if you're showing the slides, Julieta, but you're also doing backs, you're doing a lot of bellies, pregnant women, and you're doing henna crowns for cancer patients who have lost their hair. So talk about that a little bit, about, you know, all parts of different skin. So this is actually from Neeta's. These two are from Neeta. And let's see, Sara, I believe, starts at 5.
Mhm.
So here's a henna crown that Sara did. And then the next slide. That's a pregnant belly, which I just think is so beautiful, because in the Henna Artist, in the book, I only imagined that Lakshmi was doing this. I had no idea that Henna Artists were actually doing pregnant bellies. And I can just imagine that little baby inside is getting that feeling from the Henna Artist, that feeling from, you know, the love and the support that the Henna Artist is giving this pregnant woman. I just think it's adorable. Next slide, please. And then I think we'll see, so here's a back, that I think these are great ways to adorn women's body parts that can either be a very private moment, or they can be a public statement of some kind. And what's wonderful about henna is that it's impermanent. It is something you can remove and then redo again once it's gone from the skin. And the next slide after that is an arm, and you know, I love this. I love the fact that women with hijabs also love, you know, having their hands and everything adorned. I just think it's adorable that women all over the world love henna. I've had Russian women contact me, and women from Spain and women from Brazil, and everybody loves to have their skin adorned in this way. And then to be congratulated, you know, to have somebody notice, and then to be able to start a conversation with people that maybe you've never met before. That's really incredible. In the next few slides, we will see Sonia's artwork. So Sonia, this is from I think it's from your website that I took this, which I think is just gorgeous. It is such detailed work. And then the next one after that. Oh goodness, look at that. So this is where Sonia puts her spin on the groom and the bride, and putting them next to each other on the hands. So, you know, anytime the two want to kiss, you can just put those hands together. Mm-hmm. And I love the detail up at the top of the arms, where you're seeing skyline and then mountains. So that must have something to do with what the bride and groom wanted for their.
Yes.
And then the next one after this, it's a beautiful, beautiful demonstration of what is done on feet. And I think that the challenge I learned from Neeta's Spring Fling Henna Conference, the challenge is to make both feet exactly even. And nobody has exactly the same feet. Nobody has exactly the same legs. One is shorter than the other. So the challenge for a henna artist is to make all of those lines, when the feet are aligned like this, to make it look like it's all of one piece, which you did beautifully here. If we go to the very first slide again, let's look at some of Neeta's work. So, so this is a bride's henna, and I think this is more of that contemporary henna that you put in here. This must have been for a bride who wanted.
This was a photo shoot. So, like, again, I'm involved in a lot of collaborations with other vendors, you know, so that's when we can actually experiment and try new things.
Fabulous. Let's go to the next one, and Neeta can tell us about it.
Yeah, this is an actual bride, and this is actually a day, you know, a day 2 stain, as you call it, because henna takes about 3 days to be its peak color. Mm-hmm. So this, you know, must have gotten even more darker for her wedding day.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And then the next one. And this is you working on somebody's arm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. when the henna paste is applied, and you're doing this with a cone, with a very fine cone with a tip that's been cut off, and then you are applying pressure to the cone to release the henna on the skin.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's first applied like this, it is, you know, it's still wet, and so it is raised on the skin, but as it dries, it flakes off, right?
Yeah, and there's a process to it. Like I would advise the brides to keep it on for a certain number of hours. And when they scrape it off, there's oils they have to use to help scrape it off. And then again, like I have this elaborate list of instructions that I give my brides just to make sure that the henna is really good for her wedding day.
Okay, excellent. And then the next one after this, please. Oh, I just love this. This is so beautiful. Look at that. I mean,
Yeah,
to
this
have
bride loved lotuses, and she requested for that. And she's actually a dancer, so and like she has these beautiful poses that she's done with her henna. So
wow. And look at all of that fine scroll work that you are doing right below the toes. That is just incredible to me that you're able to make your lines come out so even. And that takes practice, right? It takes practice. And
yeah.
Wow. Julieta, is there any kind of a question that you want to ask? I think that these are all such beautiful designs that it's just incredible. We have some things here that, somebody is saying it was so awesome, and it was awesome to learn that Sonia is making her own henna paste now. That's very cool. And I think that this whole idea of making a living off of your craft. Sometimes people think that artists, that somehow it's a bad thing to make a living from your art. And I don't know where people get that idea, because artists make the world go round. Artists make the world a fabulous place to be. Artists, decorate us and our environments. And I can't imagine a better thing to do than to be an artist, a creative person of some kind, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
So one question that we have that came in prior for you, Alka, was to talk about about your experiencing publishing a book at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I know you talked a little bit about shifting the book launch experience to something more virtual, but if you could speak to that for a little bit.
Oh, sure. So, the pandemic hit a week or two after my book was released. And so after 10 years of working on this book and thinking, okay, now I finally get to talk to readers. This is my time. It just completely went south. And one by one, every single one of my book events was canceled. Every single one. Except, Neeta, you were kind enough to invite me way back in February, and I was able to go to yours. Yours is the only one I actually got to attend.
Awesome. We feel special.
Yeah, it was my first sort of public reading. I loved it. But what was so interesting then after that is, I was depressed. I was just like, let me just go under the covers, because this can't be happening. And then on March 11th, I get a call from my editor saying that Reese Witherspoon is going to pick this book for May. They let you know way in advance, because you have to work with their people to create content for their social media before they actually launch on May 1st. And so I was like, oh my God. It's like the last thing I would have expected. I have no idea how she got the book. I don't know when she decided. I have no idea. And then we learned from New York Times, that we were going to be on the bestseller list. And that came as a complete surprise. So I don't know why all of this happened, but I do know two things about my life that are absolutely true. One of them is that change always comes with something good as well as something bad. Always, always, always. So if you are mired in the feeling that somehow change has worked against you, you need to always remember there's going to be something super positive that's going to come out of it. Maybe you don't know what it is yet, and maybe it will reveal itself later, but you will come out with something. The second thing is that I have to go back to patience, because let's say that Reese hadn't picked the book. Let's say that the New York Times hadn't determined this as a bestseller. And by the way, that comes from the sales of the book. So apparently, you know, the sales were going crazy. So one thing that I think we just always have to remember is that there is room for patience. And even if that hadn't happened, I think eventually this book would have found its audience anyway. And you all have to remember that success is ephemeral, but success is also, you know, comes in various stages. And as with my henna artists here, Sonia and Sara and Neeta, whose websites we're going to show in a little while, but as with all of the henna artists here today too, you know that your success comes in stages. And sometimes you're just super busy, sometimes you're not. And those are times to grow and learn.
Like I always tell people that, you know, who come to the conference, you have to be patient, be true to your art, but be patient and, you know, things will come your way.
The henna community is, I think, incredible in terms of being communal and helping each other. And I am just so proud to know each of you. I am so proud that you guys have helped me become a part of this community. It's been a wonderful treat. And Julieta, thank you so much. And thank you to CCA for inviting us to be part of this, I guess, the holding patterns, to give artists a platform to talk about their art.
Yeah, I mean, we're so happy to do it, and we're so grateful to have all of you here today. And I think we have a little bit of time, so maybe we can do one more question and then I'll kind of wrap up. We had a few questions come in kind of along similar lines, talking about how, you know, you all started talking about it a little bit, but how henna artists and the community and the industry as a whole can kind of weather this lockdown and come together and envision what it will look like on the other side.
All right, you guys, you're on.
I think we just have to take precautions in, you know, what we do. This is a craft which has to be close quarters to a person. There's no way that we could invent a robotic 6-foot-long arm and try to draw, you know. So we just have to take precautions and, you know, probably like face masks, hand washing, and, you know, like having social distancing. Before, it used to be where the henna events, there used to be like 50 million people around. And that was something I absolutely hate. So this actually works in my favor, where, you know, I just have the bride to myself, and, you know, my work goes faster, and I get to, I use this term bond with the bride, you know, so that I can remember things about her, like even 5 years later, you know, when I meet her somewhere, I always forget their names, but I remember things about them. So I feel like this is going to be like so much more better for me, where there's no people around. Like now they don't have an excuse as to, oh no, we need people to be around and the bride needs to be hugged 20 times, you know. So even though I keep saying that in my emails and everything, no hugs, everything, but it still happens. And hopefully it won't for a while now.
That's so true. That's so true. There's, you know, in addition to, you know, all of the, you know, health practices that, you know, we'll be incorporating, you know, art is never going away. Obviously, we're going to come out of the other side of this, and we're going to keep doing it. And, you know, another thing that's been happening is, because we have so much downtime right now, we have a lot of people that are exploring the art form for the first time. Mm-hmm. And whether, you know, that'll manifest in different ways over time. So maybe some of these people will just decide that they love henna. They don't necessarily want to do it, but they want to get henna now. Every chance, you know, that an opportunity presents itself. Some people may pursue it as a serious hobby, and lose themselves in the meditative, therapeutic nature of it. And other people may pursue it as a career eventually, you know? So I think it's, again, it's going to be a beautiful thing in a lot of ways, despite the hardship that we're all going through in other ways right now. So I'm very hopeful about it.
Sonia?
Yes, I think when Neeta said that made me laugh because it is true. I've been thinking about the same thing, that now the bride can be just by herself rather than having so many people surrounding her. It's definitely going to be a challenge. We still have to think really, because I do have a lot of brides, they're still getting married. And they are still contacting me and saying they're keeping their booking as is, but that's not until August. So I have some time to think of how are we gonna how am I going to make this change. So I've been thinking mostly because it's summer, so I can still have them sit outside, right, in the fresh air, rather than keeping them in either the basement or a small room, just like, you know, the fresh air passes. I think so far that's what I came. I don't mind one or two people sitting around, but definitely for sure a little bit not so crowded or hugging the bride. That would be a good thing.
Will you be using gloves, you guys? The kind of surgeon's gloves that are really tight? No?
I cannot work with that.
Yeah.
I just cannot.
Because you need to feel the skin, you need to
feel the skin, like the cone, like it's just, I've tried gloves and absolutely could not. Like I tried to put henna in my hair with gloves like two last week or something, and it was a fail. It was such a fail.
And trying to do intricate, detailed work like that, you know, a henna cone, keep in mind, is made up of cellophane, a plastic material. And so when you're wearing gloves, which have a little grip to them, it's going to stick to the cone. And so normally when you're holding it with bare hands, your hands are able to move around just little tiny bits incrementally, but it allows you to make those really fine movements more easily. And so gloves definitely will impede that. So that has to be a consideration, obviously, going forward in how we approach this and make sure that we're being
It's just
safe.
frequent hand washing and having some sanitizer in our box. So every, like, say half an hour, we sanitize our hands or something. Like it has to be, we sanitize the area, like, you know, before we start, you know, or have the bride do that. So like I ask, like I've had a couple of brides and who've had small weddings, and that's what I request, for the area to be sanitized, for them to wash their hands and feet, and, you know, and the rest, no one else in the room and things like that. So.
And luckily, henna doesn't require you to penetrate underneath the skin at all. It's not like manicures where they might be somehow penetrating underneath the skin or hurting you in some way, or have broken skin. So the beautiful thing about what you're doing is henna is completely natural. You're using organic products, and there's nothing that's going to penetrate the client's skin. Now, do you wear the glove, do you wear the mask and also have them wear a mask too, or just only one of you has to wear a mask?
Well, it's definitely, so interestingly, my background, I mentioned in tech and data analysis, I actually worked at a hospital with the infection prevention team. So I have a lot of sort of, you know, related knowledge, and I understand the importance of both people wearing a mask. So for me personally, when I start taking appointments again, although I'm not now, when I do start doing that again, I'll probably have both of us wear a mask, because it raises the level of protection to something like 95% or 97%, as opposed to, you know, maybe 50 or 60. So it does make a big difference. That's what I'll be doing. Not gloves. I don't see myself, you know, finding a way to make that work, but masks and sanitizing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I just ordered like a face shield from Amazon. I still have to, it just got delivered yesterday. So I'm going to like test it out and see how that works.
Let us know.
Yeah.
You'll have to let the world know, because all these global henna artists are counting on you guys who are testing these kind of products to let them know what is viable, what is not viable.
Yeah.
I think the face mask is a good idea and the shield, but with gloves, I don't know how I feel. Just as we were saying, the detail it's in your hand. Like you have to feel it, how thin the henna is coming. Like when you're wearing gloves, it's not the same.
Yeah.
So face mask 100%. I think there's no question about that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thank you all for sharing a little bit about how you're dealing with these challenges and, helping to just continue your craft. And it's really wonderful to hear from all of you about your respective practices. So thank you for being here today. And thank you to Alka as well for coming to us with this wonderful idea.
Is the recording going to be made available to people who can see it later?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if folks want to see either this or our previous event or recordings of our upcoming events or more info for that, you can follow along the project on our Instagram. And I will put that handle in the chat again for everybody. If you're not already following us, give us a follow. That's how you can hear about recordings and upcoming events.
Okay.
So yeah, I just want to say thank you all again for being here. I'll leave the chat up for a little bit for folks who want to grab anyone's handle or websites. Yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yay, thank you. Thank you, Sonia. Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Neeta. You guys are fantastic. And thank you, Julieta.
Of course.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Bye.